How's it going, everyone? I am Zach, and welcome to the first episode of my NASCAR podcast. I have no name for it yet, and it might not just be about NASCAR. It'll be about racing, mostly NASCAR, and some things that are connected to NASCAR. If you hear something in the background, that's my child having fun at breakfast time with my wife. But I wanted to, I love NASCAR. I love racing, and I wanted a platform to talk about it. And it's 2022, so everyone can have a podcast. I already have one podcast for my preaching and my teaching. So I also do quite a bit of thought and thinking on NASCAR. So I thought I'd start writing some stuff down, and that turned into me wanting to, share that stuff. So without further ado, here is the first podcast, the first episode of my appreciation and love for racing, mainly NASCAR. If you're watching this on video, you'll just have to ignore the fact that I'm not really looking at the screen. This isn't 100% for those who are watching, but I've prepared something in written form that I like to read. It's the mid-1990s, or it could be the early 2000s, and it's a Sunday, a NASCAR Sunday. Sundays were great, not just because of NASCAR, but because of what NASCAR racing meant to all the other parts of that Sunday and around that Sunday. Sundays were fun then, and now, as I think about them 25 or so years later, getting a little older, they're even more fun. In the mornings, there is this mad rush at home, the pre-race garage, getting ready for the practice session, getting ready for qualifying, if you will. And my mother is trying to get two kids ready for church, and my dad is trying to help. As a pastor with a kid of my own now, I realize what a heroic effort and mostly successful feat this was every week that my parents and my mom accomplished with me and my brother, because we were a handful. Church is fun. But when we get there, I don't want to go to Sunday school, which happened when you got to church early because my mother worked at church. And so if the church doors were open, she had to be there. My brother doesn't mind Sunday school because he's busy picking up other children up off the ground, mostly girls he has a crush on. And one Sunday, I literally had to be dragged into the Sunday school room, kicking and screaming. I am sure that somewhere there are claw marks in the church hallway as proof of this very traumatic event in my mom's life and my life. Eventually, I do go to Sunday school. I do enjoy the flannel graphs and the songs with fun hand motions, and I'm sure if I really thought about it, I could recite a few of those songs. I don't know any of the hand motions, but the songs, if you start singing them, I could probably join in. Then there is kids' church. It's basically like regular church, except for geared towards kids who are small and can't be captivated by normal processes that happen in church. And my friends show up, and it's exciting. And there are songs, there's games, there's puppets, there's scripture stories. I like it all. It's pretty fun. My brother and my friend, they fall asleep next to me in the middle of service, and they receive what's called a quiet seat prize. And these are gifts given to very attentive and quiet children, which even then I realized was easy to do if you were asleep. Eventually, big church ends, and the parents come and get the kids. Most of the time, that's a fine process, but every once in a while, a kid, me, gets left at the church, wandering the parking lot looking for lizards until one of my parents realizes that neither of them grabbed me after church. No big deal. My mom worked at church, so it was like a second home to me. Most Sundays, though, as church ended and my parents picked me up, I knew it was time for NASCAR and crystals at Meemaw's house. We hop in the car, my mom gets the crystals, and then we head down Walnut Avenue to get Meemaw. The house was small, had a very distinct smell that I've never experienced anywhere else. It wasn't unpleasant, it was just different. And sometimes in the backyard, there were just random chickens that would hang out. There was a bush outside where sometimes we would have to pick our own hickory or switch that would then be used in our spanking as a form of punishment for some form of stupidity from me and my brother. There was the old shed out back that had an old mower in it that I was afraid of for some reason. And inside, the floors creaked with every step. It was hot in the summer unless you stood right in front of the window unit. It was cold in the winter. One room was my favorite, though. It was full of Dale Earnhardt memorabilia and merchandise that every once in a while I got to catch a glimpse of because they weren't toys, but I could look at them. There's also an old stand-up piano that over time became more and more out of tune, but apparently a lot of people in my family were musical. I just never got to experience that. As I sat and ate crystals, Meemaw would turn on the old box set television. And when I mean old box set, I mean old. And she would have to make sure the antennas were facing the right direction to make sure the signal was strong enough so that we could get the race without any interference or static or issue. And then I would watch the race with Meemaw, and of course others were there, but really it was me and Meemaw. And at 5 and 6 years old, you don't really understand what's going on in the race the way that you learn to do later. But I remember loving the noise. I remember the drone of the engine and the long back straightaways, or the streaking staccato of cars going by the camera in a row, the pneumatic air guns operating on pit road. I also remember the excitement that would happen when Earnhardt would do something good. Meemaw would cheer. She would get excited. So that would mean that I would get excited and I would cheer. And her favorite really, would become my favorite. Her good moments were my good moments. She would tell stories about the drivers, and I still remember a few of those stories that she would tell from years gone by that she had watched and grown up watching NASCAR. Sometimes I would have no idea what she was talking about, but I liked it because it was about racing. It wasn't until much later in life that I learned to appreciate more of the race than just the noise and the excitement. But as a kid, having that favorite, having the excitement and the exhilaration of the speed, the wrecks, of course, was more than enough for me to fall in love with this sport. And as a kid, I ended up knowing more drivers and their numbers than I knew my own phone number or address. I'm not kidding. I probably didn't know my own address till I was 16. But I could tell you just about every driver that was racing and what number they had. I did eventually learn my address, though. It was fun. It was exhilarating. It was Sunday afternoon NASCAR racing, and it was crystals. It was family. It was really good memories. It was right before the night service. It was the reset, the recharge, and it will forever be attached to so many good things and people and special places that I love. So thank you, NASCAR, for being such a wonderful part of my Sundays and providing a canvas of fun that connected my Sundays in very, very special ways. And I look fondly back on all of those memories of watching NASCAR at Meemaw's house. This has been the first episode of the NASCAR podcast by Zach, yet to be named something special or spectacular, but I do hope that you enjoyed it. Goodbye, and see you next time.